Hey everybody, this is Tim Peck, back from being sick for a while, so happy to be here on Project Next, where we know that the media is dividing us and we're trying to give us a message that brings us all together. And there's nothing that brings us more together than honoring our patriots, honoring the people who have fought for us and given so much to us. And today we have two veterans with us. We have Brian Zimmerman, who is Green Beret, retired from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and my father, Al Peck, who is first lieutenant, retired in the Army, fought in Vietnam as infantry. And so here today to talk about issues of war, what it means for our country, what it means to the individuals who have fought for us, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to come back home from war and what that reintegration looks like, the problems with that, as well as the beauty of it. And then finally, as part of that integration, when you're here, what is the interaction with the government like in terms of the VA and going through those systems? How does that all work? I know there's been a lot of talk about the VA recently in the news and Veterans Administration, and not everyone really knows what that is on the ground for people, more than just policy. So so Brian, you fought in two wars for us. So first of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
My
thank you,
privilege.
Dad, for doing that for us.
Sure.
First question is, when someone says thank you for serving, how does that make you feel, Brian?
When someone says thank you for serving, my first thought is, first of all, it was a privilege to get to serve this country. It's not perfect, but my worst day in America is still better than my best day anywhere else on the face of the earth. So I'm grateful that I was privileged enough to be able to go forth and preserve what this country holds dear.
Amazing. I saw you nodding to that.
Yeah.
Dad, I'm going to call you on this. It looks like I was about to call him Al. I think it's Dad for this. So I saw you nodding when Brian said, my worst day here in America is my best day anywhere else. What does that make you feel?
There's much truth to that, but to answer your question, for a long time I had a hard time with people saying welcome home, because first of all I didn't believe them. That Vietnam War, half of them didn't. They would rather spit on you than greet you.
Mm-hmm.
Took a lot of working through it till I finally realized that many people want to welcome you home.
Mm.
Can I ask you, have you ever been spit on?
Yes.
What was that like?
It's like, you stupid ass.
Yeah.
You walk away.
And you walk away. Do you talk about it afterwards?
No.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I've probably talked about that times in my life.
Yeah.
And this is the second time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, there's a lot of aloneness in being a veteran. I hear that sometimes from veterans, this word aloneness or feeling alone in times. There's also community and camaraderie and brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
sisterhood that happens that seems so much stronger than anything that we as civilians could understand. That contrast in life. Do you experience that aloneness versus togetherness at the same time? Brian? Yeah.
Yes and no. I would say yes, because it's very difficult due to the depth of the ruts that have been cut based off what I've experienced. It's very difficult to relate in that way. That being said, it's also very comforting, because nowadays, much different than when Al came home. I never had to experience that kind of treatment, so it was always much easier for me to maybe relate a little bit easier in that sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have really fond memories of being in Maine. For those of you, I'm here in Indiana for a while. I grew up Maine and in New York and on the East Coast for a bit. Before coming here, I have fond memories being in the Bangor, Maine airport, with yellow ribbons welcoming people home.
Right.
It felt important at the time. I was young, but I wonder if you had anything to do with making sure that I was there to be part of that welcoming home after the stories you just told us.
Yes. A very good friend of ours, May, was in charge of the Welcome Home Committee for our town there. And we all piled into our cars and went up to Bangor and waited for the troops to come off and screamed and yelled. And it was cathartic for me, and I hope it helped the people that were there.
Yeah. Were there welcoming committees, people, getting together like that for you?
No, no. I would say it was much different for us. When we would come home, it was generally always at night. We land on the tarmac, we come off, and then
And you're saying as a Green Beret.
As a Green Beret, right? So it was quite a bit different in that sense. Now, when we would get back to the unit and get in and get all of our gear, put in the room, the team rooms, weapons back in the arms room, then our families would be waiting for us, outside to come in. But no, there wasn't. You come home to signs, and there was none of that. Yeah, and we were okay with that. That's anonymity is what we signed up for, so we were okay with that. Right. Yeah.
So let's back up for a moment, just so people have context of what what force you were in, what that means. You have a rank, what that means. What was your job in the military? I'll start with you. You got into the military because you went to military college.
Right.
Pennsylvania
Military College.
Pennsylvania Military College. Graduated in 69?
68.
68. Great time to graduate from military college.
Yes, it was.
And then how long after you graduated did you go to Vietnam?
To Vietnam? Well, I graduated in May. West Pointers went first, so they were all going out to, and it was not until February that I started active duty. And during that time, I met my future wife and
my mother.
Your mother. And when February came, I went down to Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to training school for officers. I was a
Is that done at Fort Benning?
It's been on
Is that still done at Fort Benning?
Still done at Fort the officers training school. It's still at Fort Benning.
Got it.
And and you go through that, come home for a day or two, then I flew out to Fort Ord in California, where I was assigned.
And you also did jungle training, right?
When I was just before I was going over to Vietnam, they sent me to jungle school. One probably the most lucky place in the world, south of the Panama Canal, and it's just an awful place. And the 8th Special Forces was our training people, so and they were not nice.
No.
So we were down there for 2 weeks.
Are you grateful for them not being nice at this point, or could they have been nicer?
No, they were doing what they needed to do to get us ready for what the horrors were to come.
And what is jungle warfare training for those who never even heard that word?
Well, you learn how to fight a war in a jungle, and you also learn how to live in the jungle, and you also learn how to eat. If they don't get your food right away, you teach how to eat what's in the jungle, what's good to eat, and what's not to eat.
And you didn't have a cell phone.
No.
1968.
No cell phones.
No computers,
no,
right?
No computers.
So you just
all we had was a big yellow blanket that you threw on the ground if you got yourself lost. So if your helicopter could come over and find you.
Yeah, so a bit different. All right.
A little
And
different. And then I went to Vietnam.
all right, and we'll pick up there in a moment. And then, when did you get into the military?
So I joined the military in 2003. I was actually recruited to come into the a special forces pipeline, the potential to go into special forces training. So after I made it through that, I think there were about 30 of the initial 200 that they brought in that actually made it through the pre-selection to even go to the selection. But they knew what they were looking for. They sent 30 of us there. 28 got selected. 2 guys got hurt. They went to the next class, and they got selected. And then after that, we went into the Q course, which for me was about a year and a half. And that's where
Q,
you
like
the Special Forces qualification course, which is where you go to learn how to be a basic ground level Green Beret. In no way, shape, or form does that prepare you to be an asset just yet on the team. That's yet to be determined once you get to the team and continue to show that you are capable in your military occupational specialty, and that you're not a liability. So year and a half for me. From there, I went to the 5th Special Forces Group. I was there for nearly 10 years.
In question, the 5th
Mhm.
Special Forces Group,
Mhm.
Green Beret Special Forces. Is that which branch of the military is that part of?
That's Army.
It is Army.
It's all everything I refer to for what I was involved in was the Army. Yeah. Yeah. So I did that for nearly 10 years. They wanted to give me a break, so they sent me to Yuma, Arizona to be a military free fall instructor, a high altitude free fall instructor. I did that for almost 3 years, and then I was able to retire out of the Sensitive Activities Battalion at 10th Special Forces Group.
The only time I jumped out of a plane was in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
On a bachelorette party. My sister's jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
How many times have you jumped out of a plane?
The exact number I'm not sure, but I think I'm approaching maybe 40, 41 or 4,200 times.
4,200.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. My spine could tell you all about it.
Sure. The force of it must be incredible. And so, as a group, as special forces, you were sent places, I'm sure, where people didn't know where you were. Or people at home didn't know where you were.
They didn't know specifics of where I was. I told them what country I was in, but specifics as to what location in countries, there wasn't a need for them to know that, so that was withheld.
The reason I ask you that is that moment of kind of disconnect. They know you're in the Middle
Mhm.
East. They know you even what country you're in.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're disconnected in terms of knowing where you are. Especially when you're young, you're going from a place where people always know where you are.
Right.
And
Right.
your parents know your people are responsible for you,
Mhm.
perhaps, know where you are, and then all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
That's that must be jarring.
Maybe not so much for me, maybe more for my family.
For your family. Yep.
For me, it was, I don't know. I would tell them, I'll call you when I can call you, because trying to have a schedule of communication for back home, that's just setting them up for unneeded worry,
And were you in a relationship?
I was married at the time for my first deployment, and she did not handle deployment very well. And granted, the first time we were on the phone, we were attacked about halfway through the conversation, so she could hear the mortars landing in the background, and it was a quick, I'll call you later.
Yeah.
And that was it. And she didn't hear from me for 3 days or whatever it was. So that may have been a little traumatizing.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Does the Army have support services for spouses at all?
I don't know if they do. They didn't when I was there for when you were in service, and you came out, and the VA had almost nothing when I first came out for anybody, including the veterans. But the VA has picked itself up and really become quite an organization.
Mm-hmm. And so you were in Vietnam and also separated from mom, separated from your family. They knew you were there, and as I understand it, you were also fighting in Cambodia, where we weren't. Right there's so for the maybe you could tell the story for those who aren't familiar with the history of U.S. fighting in Cambodia when we weren't supposed to.
You had the DMZ and everything south of that.
Demilitarized
zone, right, and everything south of that, and that was where we were supposed to be fighting. But the VC and the North Vietnamese didn't do that, so they spent a lot of time walking out in Cambodia and Laos and going that way before they came in. So the B-52s would bomb what they thought were the routes where they were coming down, and some poor platoon got picked to fly into Cambodia or Laos to count the number of holes. They want to know how many people were killed. 500-pound bomb hitting wet ground. There was nothing to find except sticks. So, but that was why we were in there.
That was your assignment.
And then at the very end, just before we left, the Cambodian insurgent, and we went in, did what we had to do, and it was a different type of war altogether. I was in south in the Mekong Delta. All it was weeds and water.
Yeah.
Where other people up north, where they were jungle. It was a quick, funny story. I went jungle warfare school. Never fought in the jungle.
Imagine the Army teaching you something you didn't need to know. Imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you this question based off of something you just said. Give you a moment to collect yourself. I mean, this must be hard for both of you, and thank you so much for sharing this with all of us.
Sure.
There's such an inquisitive nature to people asking these questions. I'm learning stuff about my father for the first time, and
yeah,
I've been alive for 44 years.
Right. Right.
And something you said was we went and did what we had to do. Heard that term before from other veterans as well. Is that kind of thing? Is that something you might say to a civilian, and is that to protect us or you?
That's a really good question. I guess I haven't posed that question to myself in that way before. It's really kind of, I've always somewhat had an out, and I've generally taken it. And when someone will ask me, so what did you do? What did you do while you were in the Special Forces? What was, and I would say, and they would say, well, I know you can't say a whole lot about it, and that was my out. And I would use that as an out.
You're right.
Well, I appreciate you asking me, and I really appreciate you being concerned about me and thankful, and just kind of talk it into another direction. I was an intelligence story. So my job was to, so I would, but when they would ask me, it's also really easy for me to say, hey, you can go to YouTube and watch 1,000 videos, and you can see exactly what I did. You can see a portion of what I did.
And stop me if I'm pressing too hard.
No.
When you would do that, was that to deflect so that you didn't have to talk about it or think about it? Or was that because you were looking at that person and saying, they don't need to hear this?
Sure. There is that's a great point. And I do generally fall under the umbrella that there is just some, maybe even quite a bit of information that the public just doesn't need to be privy to. Why? What will it accomplish if you know this information? Our society has been so desensitized by violence anyways, and it really bothers me. So it was, I guess for me, I never, I can say with 100% honesty, I am not apologetic for any time I ever had to pull the trigger. Uh, I was doing exactly what it was that I was supposed to be doing at the time. And I trusted that I was where God wanted me to be at the time. And in essence, doing what it is he wanted me to be doing. Now, where I do have issues is talking about those who are affected by war simply because they are collateral damage. And that is, I think any veteran would say, you know, regardless of what situation that they were in, you know, women, children, even those that were being forced to carry suicide vests or to pick up firearms, you know, there I do have that sense of sympathy for them. But what does happen when that question gets asked is I have to revisit the fact that even though I was doing my job and I accept it and it's where I was supposed to be, that starts to chip at your humanity quite a bit. It chipped at my humanity. So that's where it kind of forces me to revisit the whole. Ooh, yeah, it took a lot of work to come back from that loss of humanity.
You talked about God. You talked about God a bit there. These things that you're seeing, and there's a lot of collateral damage in Vietnam. Um, where did faith play a role for you when you were there
Well,
versus now?
it was just, it was just, it was a bedrock for who I was, so that I just kept going to it when there were times that you didn't want to like yourself very much, so that you went to it and you asked for forgiveness and then you moved on, even though you knew what you were saying, you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, but it's pretty nasty stuff what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And how does faith with God play a role in it today?
Today well, my faith has been my faith, and it just has come along with me right through the whole thing. It actually, PTSD, things like that. The faith didn't waver from that. It it was sort of what you sat on. And so if you didn't have that, I don't know what guys that didn't have faith had any kind of experience and how they got through the whole thing.
How about yourself?
I would agree with that quite a bit. For me, my faith is very important. I try to, and mind you too, this has been a work in progress. Also, I wasn't always. I would be close to God, and then I would fall away. Close to God, fall away.
As is the process for anybody, right?
Right, right. But the difference is I keep coming back, you know, and I'm willing to lay those hurts, those things that affect me greatly. I'm willing to lay that at the foot of the cross because that's what he says to do, and it takes an enormous amount of faith to do that. And so it's very hard for me to look back at some of the things that I survived and say that was just a coincidence. There's no way that Christ was involved in that intervention. It's very difficult for me to say that. There are just too many times. So it.
Did you suffer any major injuries that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I was pretty severely injured, although I didn't know it at the time, during an operation in 2010. It would have been in Afghanistan, and my it's a long story, but I ended up having to assist a teammate, carry a teammate about 400 or 500 yards to the aid station with a person under control that we had. We had all fallen off about a 15-foot wall, and my buddy Noah was on the bottom. He had the puck in between on top of him, and then me on top of all that. And he had ended up, he stiff legged the fall, so shoved his leg up into his pelvis. But the lucky thing was we were there at the base, and so it 400 or 500 yards, whatever it was, carrying him and all that. Well, unbeknownst to me, I'd been folded up also, but adrenaline kicked in. You know, the screaming teammate, the person under control, and that just kind of took over. The adrenaline did.
Yeah.
But fast forward, and my back had gone out on me several times after that had happened, and I just thought, I'm just suck it up, and you got to do what you got to do, and this job isn't for the weak or faint-hearted. You signed up, the whole spiel. And finally, during a deployment in 21, the back just said, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was medevaced home, ended up having spine surgery, and a real shot of you're human kind of set in, which really sparked a lot of that event kicked off a lot of the internal turmoil that I had just internalized. And
Did you go back into the forces after that surgery?
After that surgery, I was able to deploy one more time. I was actually able to jump again. There was a time when I didn't know if that was going to be possible, but luckily that hit at the trail end of my career. And generally 18 to 24 months out of retirement, they want you to come off the gas and really start focusing on retirement and all of that. So it was kind of well, I guess I'm already here, so I can come off the gas and start that process.
And I know the answer to this, but you've had a major injury.
Yeah, I stepped on the landmine.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an exciting experience. So landmine blew up. I fell in the hole that it made. It hit me mostly in the backs of my legs, my arms, my butt was all chopped up. And then the funny part about it is that you fell in the hole, and you're trained when somebody gets hurt, you're going to be okay and all that other stuff. I asked, am I going to die? And everybody said, no. But for years, I said, why did I say that?
Yeah.
But I might have. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were in a situation where there were medevacs all over the place, and the colonel had to come down and pick me up and fly me to the MASH because there were no more medevacs left.
Yeah.
So, and landing in the third field hospital in Saigon, I thought I was in a MASH. For those of you who've seen MASH, when you see the nurses come running out with all the concern in their face and everything, that was exactly what I saw when they were taking me out of the helicopter. And they came around me, and I'm quite sure they shot me with something because I don't remember anything after that.
And you went back after that injury.
Yeah, I thought, oh boy, I'm going to go to Japan or something. And this was at the end of the large deployment of American troops, and people were leaving. So they sent me back to my unit. I go back to the unit. They made me an intelligence officer, and stuck me in the ground for a month while I completely healed. And then the colonel comes to me and says, "We need an officer out in the field. Look, I'll give you the best sergeant we have." And what I'm going to do is say no. So off I went again out into the field.
And how is that on people back at home?
The people back, we had very poor communications
Mhm.
back home. The people used to go on, radios and
Mhm.
pick up what we're trying to do and then send it back home. And somebody at home with the ham radios, and then somebody home would put it. And so
Mhm.
it was a tough thing. It was a tough thing. To answer the question really at the beginning of here, you know where you are and you know what you're doing. So it doesn't have the same effect as the people at home
Mhm.
who don't know where you are
Mhm.
and don't know what you're doing. And when you write a letter, you don't tell them.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
it's that way. And my wife Estelle, his mother, would the New York Times came out with a list of people who were killed
Mhm.
every Thursday.
Mhm.
And then she would go through that and make sure that I was still here.
Mhm. Yep.
So you both had a lot happen to your bodies and your minds, um, and you're here now, and we're very grateful for that. And we have the VA, we have the Veterans
Mhm.
Administration,
Mhm.
which has grown significantly
Mhm.
policy-wise and funding-wise since Vietnam. Um, what is the experience with the VA been for you? Yeah.
For me, to be quite honest, is I have very little to do with the VA. I have a VA rep out in Colorado Springs, and if ever there's a time where there is anything messed up, which really there really hasn't been, I ended up being 100% permanent total disabled. So that kind of puts you in the category where, oh well, okay, this, I don't know that they shuffle you to the front of the line or what they do, but I have never had any issues whatsoever. But in the event that a new ID, or hey, it looks like something may have changed, hey Matt, hey, how's it going, this is Brian, hey, can you look into this for me?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yep, got it, I'll get back to you, and he always does.
Yeah.
And so it's really, I really hope that it's that way for everyone across the board, but the I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're at a different stage of your life,
Mhm.
and you have a number of issues going on. VA is chalking it up to Agent Orange
Right.
exposure.
Agent Orange and a few other things. Yes.
You want to explain what Agent Orange is?
Agent Orange was a herbicide that you'd spray on the ground to kill the vegetation, and they used it a lot along roadsides so that they could push the vegetation back so that people couldn't sit in a tree on the side of the road and shoot at you.
Mm-hmm.
And um, they often use the helicopter to spray it. And we happened to be well, just walking around. You were walking in it. One day we happened to be in a night defensive position just before night, and this helicopter comes by and sprays us. So I got a good dose of Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
We know that now as a cancer-causing agent, but more than a cancer-causing agent, we know it causes heart damage.
Heart damage, yes.
And so you're suffering from a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, at 50, I had bypass surgery.
Oh my.
And I've been fighting with my heart ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talked about you had 100% disability.
Mm-hmm.
I know from growing up with you, fighting for 100% disability was, I mean, we just talked about all the things that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you did not have 100% disability somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But that because it was a different system,
Mm-hmm.
and different things were built in now. What was that like? I just always remember you fighting for another percent here or there, another 10% here or there. Oh, my ears don't work. I get another 15%.
Yeah. I have 170% disability.
Well, congratulations.
But the way the VA calculates it,
VA math. Yeah.
I only have
Yeah.
a 90.
Yes.
You really? You only have a 90%.
Disability. Yeah, but I had, if you look at all the things that they've given me ratings for, I have 107%.
Yep. Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's great. It's a crazy system.
And what does that mean, 90 versus 100 versus
But
10%?
90 or the only thing I can't get that he can get is dental care.
Mm.
Is dental care.
Dental care. That's the only thing I have to pay for.
So 89
Everything.
doesn't do anything to your
Right,
teeth.
and when I got blown up, it didn't hurt my teeth, so it doesn't qualify.
Right. Right.
And,
Right.
And so those percentages kind of map toward what you can get for healthcare.
Healthcare, when at 90, 100%, you don't pay for your healthcare.
Okay. And
As you go down, you have to pay a percentage.
all right. And you also get a lot of your care. You have a lot of doctors. I mean, at this point, and you get a lot of your care outside of the VA system.
They're very good about that.
Yeah, they send you outside because they themselves don't have the resources, perhaps, at a local place.
They don't have the resources. They don't have doctors that are I got to go to a lot of specialists, and they don't have the specialists, so they do that. I get sent to New Haven to the VA there a lot because the Yale Hospital works in New Haven, so I get a lot of different stuff out of that.
Yeah, and just a bit of policy here of something that I'm very adamant about is making sure we preserve the ability to send our vets outside of the VA system when needed. We should be having a VA system that is supporting our vets as much as possible, but every system we know has flaws. Every system, there are going to be, if you live in this place or this place or this place, a shortage of this doctor or that doctor or service or this type of suite that you need to get this type of surgery. Having a system that, without apology, without hesitation, sends you on to a private doctor to get that care is important that we as a country pay for.
Pacemaker, and I live in New York, and during COVID, I couldn't. They wouldn't put the pacemaker in, so they paid for me to go to Indiana.
Yeah, you went up to IU.
And have it put in, and so I drove out. We fixed it up. and roll back home.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Super important, and I think our veterans certainly deserve that.
They've earned that.
Earned
Yes.
that is a good way to put it, a better way. Why was that important for you? You just correct me there.
I think the word deserve is one of those words that just should be eradicated from the dictionary.
Tell me more. Yeah.
Because deserve for me, it just rings such a sense of entitlement. And maybe it's because of where we are at now as a society, because everything has been so easy and so free. And so there is, well, I deserve that. I deserve that. I deserve, there's nobody deserves anything. There's life that happens to you, and there are unfortunate things that happen, but there are also some really great things that happen to you. And it's easy to forget about all the good that was freely given, not because you deserve it, but because men and women went over and preserved the way of life that you have in far off places. It is a privilege. That is a privilege for you, for me, now. So the word deserve is, oh, well, they didn't deserve that, or that. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with deserve. It was unfortunate. It happened, that's just kind of, my dad and I, we solve all these world problems down at the glass factory all the time. But the word deserve is one that comes up.
Well, it's gone.
Habitually.
Never saying there you go. Yeah, I learned something today. I learned a lot of things today. How about you?
Well, I just, it's just the same thing. It's you, and it even earned it. The country is giving us this because of what we did, and it always cracks me up when some people say, well, you don't deserve it. You know, yeah, this is a gift that we received. Nobody said, you know, well, the reason I'm going into the military is because I can use the VA.
Right, no, that's not what he signed up.
That's not what he didn't sign
It's
up
going to
for
pay
that.
for college.
I love that. I'm going to use that. That's some really good.
Yeah.
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 So, but everything you said is right on.
Yeah. Well, after talking to both of you about this, there was a point when we were talking today where I was thinking how I said thank you for serving 15, 20 minutes before that, and it changed for me what that meant to myself. Let's say that. The thank you changed a bit.
Interesting. Yeah.
So this, for me, got me a little bit deeper into understanding. Of course, I could never understand what you all have been through.
Thankfully, you don't have to understand. Yeah.
I mean, this is special. Now I'm going to struggle. This is a unique, important day for me. Yesterday is the 12-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombings, and I was chief resident at one of the hospitals in Boston, coming in 23 patients that we cared for, all, you know, life and limb threatened, eyes, etc. A lot of stories from that, which we can perhaps tell one day on Project Next, as Sarah's over there off camera, by the way, nodding, saying, yes, we have to talk about those things. And that alone, you know, it was, people always compare it to a war zone. I never compare it to a war zone. Never been in a war. I had no idea if it was like a war zone or not. You know, people were torn up from pressure cooker bombs. It was an act of terrorism. And so today there's a lot of that emotion in me today.
Sure.
And I have no idea, and sometimes I have a little bit of guilt about talking about that because I don't know, especially with, you've been through so much more in so many more days, so many more times in a single day than I have. Yet I get a lot of accolades, a lot of people interested in that story want to know about. I can talk about it for days. People praise me for that. And I don't think you all get the same thing, even though you jumped out of a plane 42 times. So, you know, that dichotomy is sitting with me right now. And that's what kind of happened as I was thinking about it. You know, I come in with my own trauma from that, you know, pride from that. It's so small in comparison to what you've done for us. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope maybe when you say thank you to a veteran the next time, you have a little bit more appreciation than you did even before we started watching today. And thank you everybody for keep on tuning in to Project Next as we try to tackle hard issues, tackle things that are important to humanity, forget the politics, forget the sidedness, forget the Republican and Democrat part. There is nothing more unifying at this point than supporting the people who support us. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
And you earned it.
You did. You did.